works with you?
Well, I do most of the work, but on occasion my mom and dad help. Sometimes my husband, sometimes my daughter.
Oh, it's a
So
family business.
it's definitely family. Yes.
Nice.
We've been in business since 2019. Hi, I'm Molly from RockPaper.Store. I'm the co-owner. We're located in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Well, I'm Wendy Bale, and I am an artist and an environmentalist in Western New York. I live a couple hours south of Buffalo and about 30 minutes from Lake Erie in the forest. And it's very beautiful here, and it inspires my work a lot. And I do love working with Molly's rock paper. I've been using it for a number of years, and she and I have gotten together and put together some different ideas to make this combination of different skills that we can teach you while you're also working with the rock paper. Now, I'm known primarily as a sculptor. I'm a paper sculptor, and I also sculpt in clay. But tonight we're going to be doing more painting. So, and I know that a lot of people that do paper cutting also do other mediums. So I think it'll be kind of fun to stretch it a little bit. This won't be quite so much about paper cutting. It'll be a little bit more about the painting. I'm going to do a quick agenda overview just to let you know what's coming up, and then we'll get painting right away. We're going to go over the supplies, and then while you're working, we're going to talk about some fun facts about the project. And I will demo some other options of other things to paint with on rock paper as we're making the sugar skulls. And I'll do a little Vanna White while you explain what's in the package.
All right, you ready?
Ready.
All right, so in your pack, you should have one sheet of the bone colored paper, the embossing stylus.
I don't have the one that came with the kit because I already had my own, so I'm gonna use a little different one tonight.
Okay. You have a permanent marker,
Okay.
6 colors of acrylic paint.
Did everybody get the same colors?
Yes,
All right.
my daughter helped with those, just so you know. She had
Good.
a lot of fun filling those.
I'll bet.
Um, let's see, one sheet of foam board, two paint brushes, one flat and one round.
All right.
That's everything. Oh, plus a template.
Plus template.
Of course, a template.
We have the template. And you want to talk a little bit about that? We've got how they fit and all.
Yeah, so the paper, the rock paper, is large enough to fit both of the template, the skull designs, if you put it on there horizontally. So
Like
so
that.
that way you can do either two of one or both of them, or however, make up your own. It's up to you, but at least you have the opportunity to make two of them.
And this is definitely a translucent paper, which is nice
Yeah,
because it'll be great for seeing through it.
definitely.
All right. There are a few other things that you're going to need tonight, and I'm going to let you know them now, and then you can run around and get them if you need them. Or I mean, they're pretty optional except for the water. You will probably need let me get one that's actually got water in it. A little cup of water is useful for cleaning your brush out between colors, and sometimes adding water in to get a little bit more of a wash effect to it. You're also going to need some sort of scissors. I'm going to be using these guys tonight. And you can also, if you want to cut this out at the end, like I said, it's not a lot of cutting, but if you do want to cut it out using a knife and a board, then that works fine too. That's perfectly fine. It does not matter. And then the other thing that I think is really, really helpful to have is some sort of tape. You can either use like a painter's tape, or I like to use the washi tape just because it's kind of small and it's really low tack. And the only thing that you need that for really is to just attach the paper to the template so that it doesn't shift around on you. You don't have to do it in a lot of places, just tack it down a couple of places.
Sue Ellen made a good point. Paper towels are also handy to have too.
Ah, yes.
Or something to dab your brushes between colors.
That's a good point. And I'm going to show you a Pinterest board. Today we're going to talk about sugar skulls. And so I wanted to give you some examples of how sugar skulls are what they are and what they look like. And this is like the actual sugar skulls. It is, and then they're used in artwork a lot. People do a lot of face painting, like this woman here and these three ladies here. So you can see that sugar skulls are very, very colorful, and there's a lot going on. So we're going to have some fun tonight just playing with getting a lot of color in there. I did find one that I put in here somewhere. This guy over here that was done that was not as colorful. It was kind of like monochromatic, and but that's kind of unusual. Usually they're much more colorful. So we're going to have some fun playing with some paint and color tonight. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up the template. You can decide if you want to do, if you like, you can cut your piece of paper in half and just do one of them, or you can do what I've done and just tape the whole thing on there. It doesn't really matter. And you can decide which one of these you want to do, or if you want to be inspired by those ones I just showed you, or any others that you've seen or are interested in, or just want to make something up, feel free to step outside the box here. You do not need to necessarily follow the template, but I thought it would be a good way to kind of give you an idea of how this works, and then later you can branch out if you like. So whatever you want to do. But what I like to do, it would be perfectly possible to just paint directly on this with the template behind it. But as you start to add the paint to it, you'll discover that it'll get harder to see through it. So my recommendation is to go ahead and outline lightly around it. We're not going to do a full-on embossment here. And before we do that, let me just show you the difference here. This one is I'm showing you the back side so you can see the embossment. This is one that I just did what I'm going to recommend we do tonight. It's kind of a light line around it. Don't emboss in a bunch of details. Okay. But then this one, I actually embossed in a whole bunch of stuff, and it became very kind of difficult to paint because it was all of these different levels, and I found it a lot harder to paint. So if you wanted to, you could do an embossment on it after you've painted it, but that has a tendency to crack the paint. So for this particular project, I was happier with the skull where I didn't do a lot of embossing on it. So, I mean, you can emboss enough to tell you like where you basically want to go. So you can go around the outside. You guys can go ahead. You don't need to necessarily follow. This isn't going to be much of a demo. You can just kind of go ahead and start going around the outside. I want to get you painting real quick here. But I like to just kind of go around the outside and then do light embossment to indicate where the basic design is. And plus that way, if you decide you want to kind of off-road a little bit, you don't have to follow the lines that are there. But it does help to have a little bit of a sense of it. Particularly since sometimes it's a little on the, they seem to be quite symmetrical. That's one thing I have noticed, is that like if there's a flower on one side, there's usually the same kind of flower on the other. That doesn't mean yours has to be, though. And I like to cut out the eyes. I think it gives it a little bit more depth. and the nose too. And one thing you want to might want to keep in mind is if you decide you want to do more of these and you want the template, you could just use the outline of the skull and the eyes and nose and put your own design elsewhere. But you might want to Xerox the template so that it doesn't get too worn if you're going to do more than a few of these.
Wendy, when you said that you didn't like when you had embossed too much, and now you're saying to possibly emboss some of the major design elements.
Yeah, I just don't want to, I don't want to do a big deep embossment on it because it makes it difficult to paint. This first one that I did, I put big deep embossments on it, or hopefully you can kind of see on the like on the teeth, and it then when I went to try and paint it, it was all bumpy and hard to paint. So I just like this time I just put like a really light, didn't even put in all of his teeth. I put heavier embossments around the eyes and nose because I'm going to cut those out, but these are very lightly embossed so that I can see where it is, but it's not really buckling the paper at all, which is better for this. I mean, you can go back in and put more in if you want, but that was just kind of my personal preference. All right, how's everybody doing? We're getting ready?
Yes.
Ready to start playing with some paint?
I'm just doing my major embossing, but I'm wondering how much that really means. I've done like I'm doing the non-butterfly one. So
Okay.
I did the flowers and leaves at the top, the eyes, the nose, and just around the teeth, the whole mouth shape, but nothing more than that. What else would you suggest? Okay,
I put some dots in, it's kind of funny because I look at the template and then I realized that I put a lot more. I put the original dots in and then went around them, and I added a lot of other stuff to it. So this is just sort of a jumping off point. So I would just put anything that's kind of symmetrical, like these two flowers, and make sure that you get the shape of that jawbone in there. So because that's going to be important as we start putting some washes and things in it to get that shape in there. So I would recommend that you open up your, these can be a little bit tricky when you first open them up. So you can maybe open up a couple that you want to work with and then get them set up to paint with. This guy doesn't want to open. Come on, pink. There you go. It's kind of like once you get the hang of it, they behave better.
Wendy, I have one more question.
Let's hear it.
Are you embossing on both sides of the line or only on one side?
I just did it on one side.
So like generally the outside of the shape?
Oh, you mean one side of the shape?
For instance, on the flower.
Does this answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Put in as much as you feel you need.
Hold yours one more time. Let me just look and see where you're at.
And you can see I did it much heavier around the parts I'm going to cut out.
Okay.
And I think it's more about just being light-handed about it, not push too hard. Because this is a nice heavyweight paper. It's a nice thick paper, but it's not something that's I mean, you want to have your embossment be a little gentle, I guess.
I look at it as more of a guide.
Yes.
Like your outline so that you know where to put your paint, more or less.
Yeah, and it works better than just keeping it on the template because you can always turn it over and look. You know?
So just because I like to know where we're going, because I frequently make assumptions and I'm wrong, seriously.
Okay.
Uh, so are we going to paint and then use the big marker?
Yeah, that's what I like to do.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, but I was going to go the other direction. But then I just occurred to me that I bet there's a better way to do it. And turns out there was.
I like being able to do like get the paint in there and then use the marker to kind of define and tidy up and then add other things. If you look at what I did with this guy, you can see I painted it first and then I went in with the black to make all these little graphic lines and
Okay.
squiggles and things around there to kind of fill the extra space.
Okay.
Because I wanted him to be really full. The nice thing about this now is that we really don't need the foam core anymore. We can, once we've got our embossment in, we don't need that anymore. And I'm thinking that that'll mean that you guys will be able to see better what I'm doing because against the gray. Oh, I'm just looking at the chat. Thank you, Sue Ellen, for saying that the workshops are very good and you would do more. That's wonderful. What I would like to do before you start painting on your sugar skull, my recommendation is to get a little bit of experience with this particular paint. Because even if you've painted with acrylic paint before, this particular kind might be different. It might have a little different texture and viscosity. It might be a little thicker or thinner. So go ahead and try out some of the paint. And I would recommend just coming up into like a blank corner that you're not using and getting a sense for how much paint you need to put on. And then also, like if you get some water in there and thin it out a little bit, what will happen to it in terms of making a wash? And
can the rock paper be cleaned? You know, if I go, oh man, that's totally wrong, can I actually remove the paint?
Yeah, while it's still wet, you can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You've got to once it dries, then you're kind of stuck with it. But
Unless it's watercolor. Of course,
unless
this
it's watercolor, but I mean, look at that. I just put a little bit of extra water on that, and it came right off. So there's definitely, because it doesn't absorb the way like a watercolor paper would or canvas would, it's not going to absorb it. But I think it's kind of good to kind of play around a little bit on the edges of your piece of paper so that you can get a sense for how it's going to behave for you. And of course, there's a bunch of colors here. I use them pretty well straight, but if you want to mix them, you certainly can mix them. For this kind of thing, I like the colors to be really, really vibrant. And sometimes I find that when you mix colors of these types, you end up getting more dull colors. So it works better for me to put the colors next to each other and just let them be kind of, mix them like by having them next to each other as opposed to actually physically mixing the color. But anyway, you can experiment around on your own and see what you come up with. You might invent some fabulous colors. So there's two basic ways that I like to start with these guys. And this one, I kind of discovered it when I was doing this one, is that doing these light washes around the edges gives him a little bit more shape. They have a very nice watercolory look to the outside of it on this one. And that is because I put this wash in here. And so I would highly recommend starting with putting a wash in and just kind of deciding whatever color you want to have for yours. I think maybe I'm going to go with purple. And I'm going to just put a little bit of this purple around the bottom edge of it. And remember, if you fall off the edge or get off the edge of it, and you're going to be cutting it out, so it doesn't really matter too much. But if you put in a little bit of paint on there and then come in perhaps with your other brush and then just let it have a little bit of a, come out with a little bit of a wash, then that'll give you some nice shape to your shape to the skull itself, so that you're kind of putting a little background in for it. And I'm gonna keep this fairly wet, but if it's too wet, it'll take forever to dry because, as I said, it doesn't absorb. So I'm just gonna kind of let that water kind of blend it out in there, and you'll notice that it puddles up on there, which is one of the things that is different than working on it with, than if you were working on it with a more traditional paper that is more absorbent. So it's nice and easy to come in and just kind of blot that extra liquid off of there, but you don't want to take too much out because you want to keep your wash in there. So when I'm doing this,
Your flat brush is wet when you come in to make the wash?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, and that will help kind of spread that around, but don't get too crazy with the water because it will take a while to dry if you put too much of it in there. I use a hair dryer a lot when I'm working in this style. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and my guy is gonna have kind of a purple lower mandible here. But then I think I'm gonna go ahead and switch over maybe to a different color, like maybe the green, and use that to create this little, whatever that jawbone thing is. I don't know the anatomy well enough. And by doing this, we're giving him just a little background shape. And while we're waiting for that part to dry, we can do some of the other parts. But I do like to kind of give it just a little wash back there so that it has a nice little soft thing going on in the background. It makes it look more complex, but you will also notice it does bead up in places. And I actually really like that. I think in this case, particularly for this subject, it makes it kind of look gnarly when it has that sort of beaded up bit. But that's because we're adding this water to it. See, like if you notice this part right here, see how it's kind of beaded up? I think that's kind of cool. Then I am gonna try to remove a little bit of the extra puddles of water and blend it a little bit. And the rest of it, once this part is done, you can kind of clean up any edges that you need. Once this part is done, then you can go in pretty much with all full strength paint on top of that. And I'm using my tissue here to kind of blend a little bit too. Don't want to blend into his teeth too much, but when I did him before, I put more of a blue along that edge, which I kind of liked too, but I don't know, I was feeling in a green mode tonight. And since I have the green out, I think I'm going to start working on the leaves, because it kind of makes sense to me to just keep that paint going. And being careful not to get into the wet paint, I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of green outline in here. And the nice thing about the acrylic is that you can layer it if you want. I'm going to put green, do all my green leaves at once. It's going to be tricky down at the bottom because they're right next to his purple jaw. But I like following those embossment lines. It makes it pretty easy. I'm going to leave my example up, but I'm also going to I'll leave this one that I did before that's the same as that. And then I'm also going to try and put this guy in here so you can see if you happen to be doing the one with the monarch, you can see what I did with that. But I want to talk a little bit while you guys are painting. I thought I would talk a little bit about some of the fun facts about sugar skulls and monarchs, which are both sort of icons for this particular holiday that we're talking about in this series of classes. Dia de los Muertos is celebrated annually from October 31st to November 2nd. So unlike American Halloween, it is not a scary holiday. The holiday marks a period of celebration and remembrance. During this season, you will see sugar skulls everywhere. Here in the US, it is becoming more common to see them, but the holiday is traditionally observed in Mexico where it was originated, but it's also spread to all over Latin America. So I found this quote that I liked. It says, "In Mexico, we represent death with sweetness and nostalgia," says Victoria de la Sana, an artist from Guadalajara, Mexico, who recently worked on a project incorporating sugar skull art for tequila cazadores. The sugar skulls on the altar illustrate the passage from the earthly to the spiritual. They are considered an allusion to death so that we remember that it is always present. Therefore, life on earth must be fully lived. I thought that was kind of an interesting explanation of the sugar skulls. So the meaning of the sugar skulls, in contrast to many other cultures around the world, skulls aren't representative of the sadder side of death. Sugar skulls are not morbid. They are bright and colorful and celebrate the lives of the departed. The actual sugar skulls, the confection, they're made from a white sugar mixture that's shaped with a skull mold. They aren't meant to be eaten, though. They're very hard after they've made them. And they're decorated with colorful designs and adornments. Sometimes those parts aren't necessarily edible. And the name of the deceased loved one is often written on the forehead. The brilliant images of sugar skulls show up also in face paint, in artwork, and home decor. Today, we are making sugar skull art on rock paper, but perhaps most importantly, we're learning the skill of painting on rock paper. So, and one of my sugar skulls does have a butterfly on it, and that's another common symbol used during this time. And I hadn't really thought about this, but our migrating butterflies appear in Mexico about the same time of year. And so they are a special icon on people's Day of the Dead altars. According to the traditional belief, the monarchs are the souls of their ancestors who are returning to Earth for their annual visit. So it's a timing thing. you can certainly blend these colors. I like layering them up too. I mean, you can put one layer on, let it dry, and then put another layer on to make it look more vibrant.
Almost seems like, or feels like working with watercolors in some respects. in
Yep.
some-
Yeah, well, it is water-based. It has
That-
kind of a similar feel to it. It's more forgiving though.
That's for
I think
sure.
that's because of the paper.
Definitely.
Yeah, I like getting those little washes in there. I think that's what gives it sort of more of the watercolor feel to me.
Mhm.
It's not having just the real solid, kind of still being able to get the translucency of the paper.
Right.
Oh yeah, forgot what I was doing there for a second. So to that end, I'm going to go back in on top of I did my green leaves first. I'm going to come in again now and add some dark areas to give them a little bit more shape. Because even though I put it on full strength, it's not really that opaque. Q-tips would be handy too right now.
I was thinking the same thing, actually.
I'll have to put that on the list.
Right.
Bring Q-tips. This is fairly small. Although I sometimes just use my fingers. And if you mess up like I did, you can just come back in with water and fix it. Which in this case, it's on top of that wash, but that wash has already dried. So it's not going to go anywhere.
We're breaking all the rules, Wendy.
I know, right?
Right?
True. Is that I'm gonna set mine aside for a minute, and I'm going to put some things on camera. I'm just gonna whip through a few of examples of rock paper artwork that I have done in the past few years. This is done with pencil and white ink and a little bit of charcoal. And that is a feather that I did a while back. And I used a very thick rock paper. And the back side of it, you'll see, has got a little bit of embossment in it from the pressure of the pencil that I was using. But it's other than that, it's pretty flat.
Can I ask what kind of charcoal you used?
I'm guessing this is probably maybe General, or maybe one of those black sticks that has the peel off stuff,
Okay.
because
Stick charcoal, not the liquid charcoal, because don't you use liquid charcoal
I
sometimes?
do, and I'll show you one of those in a minute, but this one happens to be dry charcoal. I can tell because it's smeary and I didn't spray it.
That was going to be my next question. Did you spray it?
I did not spray that one. This one is done with colored pencil that is the aquarelle colored pencil. So you draw it on dry, and then you can put the water on it, and it activates it and turns it into watercolor. And I may have shown that one last time too. I can't remember which ones of these I showed. But this one is done with pens. So they're actually, I don't know how much of that actually shows in there, but it's metallic. It's got like a metallic shine to it there. And then some ink. And this one is also done with a watercolor pencil that's been activated to get all these nice dribbly, watery effects in there. And this one is a combination of graphite pencil and metallic pens and a white pen. So just kind of mixing a lot of things in. This one is on a very lightweight. This is a very thin one. You can actually see through it to see both sides of it. This one is one of my favorites. It's a pink sheet. It probably doesn't read as pink on Zoom, but it is a pale pink, and then it changes to white, and then there's a little bit more pink. It's kind of a lavender pink. And I used the metallic pens on it to do this little seahorse. That one ended up being quite embossed. But I did the embossment after I did the drawing. In fact, the drawing sort of guided the embossment.
So when you say metallic pens, are you meaning like gel pens?
Yes.
Yeah. That is beautiful.
And then this one, thank you. And then this one is done with silver point. And so that's one of the unique qualities of rock paper, is it does accept silver point, which if you use silver point on a traditional sheet, you would have to put a ground on it to make it work, but it does pick up the metal point. So that is, and this one is pretty heavily embossed as well, kind of messed up on the backside, but you can see that it's got pretty deep embossments in on that one that I did essentially just with the silver point stylus. And then I added a little bit of pink on my vulture's head because, you know, they gotta have a pink head. And then lastly, in the show and tell portion of this, and I meant to take this out of the frame so that you wouldn't see my ring light, but this is a snake that I did in black rock paper, and then I really heavily embossed it, and then I used acrylic, metallic acrylic paint to pick up the highlights of that. So now I've shown you the actual artwork I've done with it. I wanted to do a little bit of a demo as to what different kinds of things, how they work on the rock paper, and I thought we could use this as kind of an experiment, a time to experiment. And so I'm going to run through a series of things, starting with, since we're working in acrylic paint right now, I'm going to go ahead and do my first square here. I'm just going to do little squares of things, and we can see how they react. So I'm going to have full strength acrylic paint. I recommend that you guys try to do something like this because it'll give you a better idea of what kind of things will work for you. And then I also have these Arteza acrylic markers, which are wonderful to work with, but you do have to activate them, because when you first open them up, they're like this, and they don't have anything. They don't have any of the paint down in them. So that is one of the kind of annoying things about them, is you have to kind of get them going. But it's a color that's called fluorescent orange, and it works fabulous. Love the way they work on there. So that is the acrylic marker. Now for something completely different. You were asking about the liquid charcoal, which I do use a lot of. This is the Nitrum liquid charcoal. I use a ton, and I'm going to try that out. I'm just going to take it straight from the tube. Normally I would put that on a palette, but.
Sue Ellen asked if you've tried inks or gel pens.
That's coming up. I'll pull those up next. I've got a pile of art supplies here, and I'm just going to show you as many as I have time to show you while you guys are finishing your paintings.
Have you had much luck with gel pens? Because they don't ever seem to really work very well for me.
I love them. That's what I did that seahorse out of.
Okay.
Okay, so that is
the wrong ones then.
Well, there's a lot of really cheap ones, and I have a lot of really cheap ones, and sometimes they don't last very long. Liquid charcoal is wonderful because you can then, particularly on a medium, like on a surface like rock paper, you can come in and you can just blot it out, and look at that. Completely, or don't look. I just got excited because I dearly love liquid charcoal. That's one of my absolute favorites. Okay, so now we were going to talk about inks and gel pens. All right, so let's do ink next. So this is a brush pen that is preloaded with ink. And I don't know what this is going to do. I've never done this one. So let's see what we got. Oh, that actually works pretty nice. This is a very soft black. And it's, wow, it's making some nice little granular kind of things, which are kind of cool. I like that.
What was that?
That is a
Oh,
preloaded brush pen that's just, it's got a soft black ink in it. Now let's try, since we're kind of in a black and white mode here, you guys are you have a Sharpie with your kit. We've got the skinny one that's that ultra fine point one. This is the one that came in your kit, is a heavier duty one. It does give you a nice big black mark though. That's kind of good. So Sharpie's always a winner. And it won't go anywhere. It doesn't smear. We like that. All right, so then micron pens. Now this is I'm going to use this one because it's skinnier. This is the micron pen. Which works pretty well on it, but I'm guessing it might smear. I don't know. Yeah, it wants to smear. Micron, I would use with caution because I think you're likely going to have it smear. That did not surprise me. Okay, pencil works great. Works beautifully. This is my favorite, the black wing pencils. You will notice.
oh, yes.
Don't you love the black wings? Aren't they great?
I have just become a convert, and
I know, once you get one, you will notice that it will emboss the back of your paper. I was careful not to do it too much so that it didn't. I think that's how I started actually doing the embossments. I think I originally got the paper and I was fiddling around with doing something with pencil, and it started me down the embossment path. And we know where that led. Okay, so this is graphite.
Yeah.
So this is a flare pen. And it definitely needs time to dry. So again, I would use that with caution. I think the Sharpie is going to be a better idea than that. Now, here is something that Molly and I have had a lot of conversations about, colored pencil, because Molly works in colored pencil. And she was telling me that the Prismacolors she doesn't like as well as the brand that she uses, which is, what's your brand again?
I can't pronounce it.
Sorry.
Oh gosh, ew.
Is it Faber-Castell?
Well, I use those, yes, but I also use this other one. It's somebody told me, I think it's Caran d'Ache.
Oh yeah. Oh, yep. Okay.
have
I
you
really like
tried the Derwent? It's called Graphitint.
Mm-hmm.
It's what colored soluble graphite.
Yeah.
I love these, but I haven't used them on rock paper.
Okay.
Well, so Molly tells me that Prismacolors aren't making quite as nice of a product as they did in the past. I
Yeah.
used a lot of Prismacolors back in the day. And when I say back in the day, I'm talking 30 years ago. That might be generous. It might be closer to 40. So So these are very old, but I gotta tell you, this just laid down a beautiful, non-smeary, gorgeous bit of paper of colored pencil. And what I love about it, and I don't know if you'll pick it up with this, is it got kind of a texture to it. So the texture of the paper shows up beautifully. So anyway, if I were so inclined, I might want to try to explore a little bit more with my old Prismacolors. That said,
Yeah, I have some that are about 20 years old, and they feel like they're a lot better quality than some of the newer ones.
there's
But
also gouache, which is of course opaque watercolor. And this one hasn't been opened, so I'll have to pop him open. But I'm gonna again just take it straight out of the tube. And we'll put a little bit of gouache on here.
Wendy, Sue Ellen asked if she said, can you emboss on watercolor paper?
Not on real thick watercolor paper. I only really like thick watercolor paper. You can kind of emboss on some other papers, but it doesn't always get that. I would say the short answer is I prefer not to. But I've been doing a lot of watercolors lately on actual watercolor paper, and I just don't think that the structure of the paper lends itself to that as well as something like rock paper does.
Well, do you use
Or
the,
vellum. I mean, I emboss on vellum sometimes, but that can be a little bit more
do you use the smooth watercolor paper, or the textured? What is it, cold press or hot press?
right. I like the cold press so that you get the texture of the watercolor paper in there.
Yeah.
But you know, for most things, if you're doing like a straight up illustration and you want it to have really precise details, then you would use the hot press so you get that nice smooth
Mhm.
look. So we had a request for gel pens. Let me get down in here and find some gel pens. Okay, well that's green. Here's a blue one. This is a better color to go next. Okay, so this is these are really cheap. These are Artist Loft, so they're like the Michaels cheapy ones. Let's hope it works. And it has it works pretty nice. I would use it again with caution because it is picking up pretty quickly. So you'd want to have it, make sure that it has a chance to dry. But I particularly like using those because there's I have a lot of them that have a little bit of metallic going on in them. Like this green one here is more, this one has, but I'm having to bear down quite a bit more on this to get the color to lay in. And that's when you start getting the embossment on the backside. And I mean, if you want that, great. If you don't, then it's not so great. Okay, so that's the gel pen. Fun little ink brushes that are iridescent. These are Sennelier. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. My French is non-existent. But
You have to be like, you have to know all these different languages just to know all the different art supplies that are
I
available.
know. Right. Like I've been using these German ones, this German paper lately too.
Yeah.
Okay. This is going down very nicely. I'm guessing it will need time to dry, but that's fair. I mean, sometimes that's okay to just let it do its thing. I have another color I'll throw in there because I think that yellow probably didn't show up very well.
I can see it.
Oh, that one is very, very sparkly. Faber-Castell Pitt pen, and this is a color called copper, and It is fabulous on here. I like the ones where the color will just lay down and you don't have to work at it. So, you know, the gel pens are a little bit more work. I'm going to do a little bit of silver point because this is one medium that a lot of people don't know about. But I love it dearly. This is a silver point stylus. And it is literally just a piece of silver wire stuck into a handle. In the old days, they would have put this into like a twig or something. But just as an example, you can see if I try to put that, oh, well, I'm gonna make a liar out of me. It's gonna kind of show up, but it's not, you really can't do much with silver point on plain white paper, just plain like non-treated paper. You normally have to put a ground on it, but the rock paper is very receptive to it, which is kind of a cool but obscure benefit to rock paper because not very many people actually use it. But I am having to put a fair bit of pressure on it, which is giving me an embossment, which is the reason why my vulture ended up pretty heavily embossed. But it does make a nice does a nice silver point. Typically you would put a ground on it. In the old days they made it out of rabbit skin, something or other, bone, ground up bone, that's what it was. Brand called Carrot. I'm going to use a different color because that one's black and that's not very interesting. Let's use this brown one. Let's get it to show up. Okay, so this works. This is what I have done a lot of stuff with. And when you first put it down, it's not real strong of a color, but then you can come in with some water.
Sue Ellen asked if you can do a transfer onto rock paper.
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
What kind of transfer? Because I have done an inkjet printout on regular printer paper,
Right.
and then ironed it onto rock paper. And
and it didn't melt?
No. I put like a towel. I used a very low setting, and I used parchment paper between the iron, to protect it. Yeah, and it didn't melt, and so it transferred, and then I just put it in water and wiped off the printer paper.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It kind of gives it like a smoky look. I mean, I don't know if I got all of the paper off of it, all of the printer paper, but it's kind of a cool effect. Of course, you have to remember if you're using words, you have to print them out backwards. I made that mistake a couple times.
Yeah, the voice of experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like what, are you asking about, she's asking matte medium or Mod Podge. I think people do it with that too. So it's kind of the same idea. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you've got my interest piqued. I would like to try that. That would be fun.
Yeah, it is very interesting for sure.
So I'm going to throw in the Stabilo pencil. My opinion on that one is it's a little waxy because that's sort of their nature. So this is a series of Tombow alcohol-based pens. So these are a little bit different than some of the others. It does come with a brush. And that lays out really nice, very similar to that other brush pen that I used. It has a tendency to kind of want to puddle up, in that it doesn't, it's not like a flat color. It's kind of granular, which I love. I think that's great when it does that. And these are the aquarelles that I was using. I had forgotten I had one in there, and I've got a lot of colors I could have used instead of that boring black and brown. In fact, since the stuff is still wet, I think I may come in and hit it with this. You can put the pencil down dry and then add water, but you can also come in with a dry pencil where there is water and activate that up, and it gets really, really, really nice and intense.
You can dip the tip of your pencil in the water too. And that
Yeah.
gives an
Yeah,
interesting-
exactly. So that's got, I just did that. Look how nice and bright that is. Woohoo. Love that. Here, I'll bring it up here. So maybe it kind of shows. I don't know. It's pretty dark there. To my mind, it's eye-popping magenta. but it probably doesn't look that way on Zoom. All right. Almost done with the demonstration portion of this. I'm not going to fill all of these little squares. I may fill more of them later, but these are my brand new, which I'm really excited about, Japanese watercolors. And the fun thing about these is they're somewhere in between wash and transparent watercolor. So I'm going to, let's see, what color do I want to do here? I'm going to, kind of fond of this teal color here. And I'll load my brush up pretty heavy so that you can see what it does in the more solid bit. And then the nice thing about it is that it does do a very nice wash. Now I'm noticing on this paper, as I'm not surprised because watercolors do this, it is beating up and making little textury things. So it doesn't always exactly act like you would expect because it's not absorbing into the paper like it does with a traditional watercolor sheet. So that's sort of the biggest difference. But I've found that if you really want it to get solid, you don't want to do that, let that dry and then hit it with another layer. And then it will do that. But I personally kind of like those little puddles that you get with it. But they do take forever to dry. So that watercolor is probably the trickiest thing to use on rock paper. So these are very, very metallic. I'm gonna throw one of those in there too, but it will do the same thing because it is watercolor. Let's go with this really metallic gold here. And it will have, this is more of a transparent watercolor, but it's also, as you can see, I put too much water in it. So it's really kind of difficult to work with doing it like that. So if I were going to do it more properly, I would probably put I would use as little water as possible. I'm going to try another one just next to it. This is done with very little water, much more successful. But honestly, I think if you want this kind of effect, you're better off maybe with just using the acrylic, because you can get that same kind of effect, but it's not going to be quite so difficult to work with. But you can combine them. I like doing lots of different mixed media things. To me, whatever works works, and if it doesn't work, then do something different next time. But playing around and discovering these different things is half the fun of making art, I think. So that concludes the demonstration. So now I let you guys get way ahead of me. Mine will not be done.
Mine will not be done either.
All right. But I did want to have something else to, to fill the time. So you didn't, so that you can come back and either review it, or if there's anything you want to add to it, then that's fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and paint a little bit. Go back to painting mine a little bit. I'll see if I can catch up with you guys, because I actually think just trying out, anytime you have a new thing, like say you're working with rock paper for the first time, try it out with a whole bunch of different things. I mean, I talked to Molly a lot about, what do we use for adhesives? What we've had so many conversations about it. And it's been interesting to try different things and just experiment.
Mhm. I always encourage everybody to tell me when they figure something new out, because I unfortunately can't or cannot try everything. And so many people have so many great ideas on different things to use, and
Mhm.
some things that I've never even heard of. And it's like, oh wow, it's just so fun to be introduced to new things.
So if you do want to add the black in, this is a fine point that we're working with,
Oh,
and it's not an ultra fine. And I have found that if you kind of do it with little dots, it gives you a little finer line. You can always come back in and put that in more thickly if you want to. But I sort of like doing these little dots because, I don't know, it kind of looks a little bit more delicate. But if you happen to have an ultra fine, like this kind, that one you can come in and just you can either outline if you like, or you can use it just to add other details into it. I like doing the little squiggles and things around it. I'm going to outline my leaves just to make them stand out a little bit more, and the little hearts. But then it's kind of fun to just put some almost calligraphic type things in between. And I told you it's nice to have these things be symmetrical. If you get too crazy with it, the symmetry can be challenging to replicate, but I'll see if I can kind of fake it.
oh, I love just the addition of the dots.
Yeah, doesn't that look nice? I think the dots are kind of fun, and those will kind of make it pop a little bit more,
Exactly.
And you can use it to define. I mean, if you haven't painted it perfectly, it doesn't really matter, because you can kind of let those black lines create your edges. And then you have a choice. I mean, you can, if you want, in fact, I'll demonstrate this. You can just take your black Sharpie and fill in the nose and eyes. But your other option would be to cut those out. And if you cut them out, you can kind of bend the center of it over and in so that it has more depth. But I think for this one, I'm kind of happy. This Sharpie is putting down such a nice dark, this marker's putting down such a nice dark black. I think I'm going to just use that, because that looks good and solid. And then there's only one cut to make, and that's around the outside of it. Of course, you could just leave it on the thing if you wanted, but I've kind of slopped over the edges, so I'm planning to cut mine out. And I'm going to put some extra, even though I've already gone around it with a Sharpie, I'm going to put some extra thickness of paint on there to keep that paint looking really thick and solid, because then it will be even more opaque. Just in some of the areas. I like some of the areas to be very thin and some of them to be very thick. It makes it more interesting, I think, if it's not all the same. All right. I keep his teeth thin so they look like they're translucent. Like instead of like outlining all the teeth, you can just put dots in like where the teeth would meet. It gives it a little bit of a sense of like there might be like some spaces in there, but not necessarily putting in, you know, I think it looks too much like I did this one and I didn't think that was very good because I really kind of outlined all the teeth. I thought it was kind of looks like corn, you know. Whereas this one where I just put the dots in, I thought that was better. So it's just experiments. Let's see where we are. You know, mine looks different than, I think I like the one that I did tonight much better than the one I did before. This one was clunkier or something.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, that's the same pattern, but isn't it interesting how it comes out different? I like the washes.
Yeah.
And the one with the butterfly is a little tricky to do with that pen. If you have a thinner pen, I think it would work better. But I did that with the thicker pen, and I was I did the dotting thing also, so that kind of helped. But yeah, he still needs a little bit of work. I'm not going to cut him out until I've finished all of the rest of that. But I'll get him finished up by the time we do our Raven workshop. This is kind of where we're going. I'm gonna have to raise up just a little bit, get him lined up sort of in there. Maybe I'll do him kind of sideways so he fits better. So our sugar skulls will fit in with the flowers that we did last week, and then we've got the raven that we'll be working on, and that's going to be a lot of talk about not just ravens but doing birds in general. So the techniques that I'm going to teach you to do this, you can use to do more colorful birds if you're not into blackbirds. So, but that's the goal. That's the end goal for where we're going with this.
Oh,
I love it. I like what you did with the bottom with those little shapes down at the bottom, and the teeth look great.
Yeah.
And the shading is wonderful.
Beautiful.
Very cool. All right, we'll try to get them finished up by next week so that when we do that, we can actually assemble the whole thing. That would be
I have this fantasy that I'm going to do another skull and
Right.
I'm going to do more flowers between.
good.
Yeah,
I-
it probably won't happen. This is the first time I've done any art since the last class.
Well, it's good for you. It's good for you. All
Yeah,
right, I'm
not traveling
come
this
up
time.
again, and I'm gonna try to get, if I can get there we go. Ready? And I want to see your face too. Oh, here, I'll do this. All right, now we're all kind of equal. That looks pretty good. Yay! We all look fabulous. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Cool. Excellent. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing you both next week.
yes,
And we'll be rocking the Ravens.
yes.
Definitely.
All right. Good night.